This video will contain some light spoilers for the Goblin Slayer and the Golden Kamui Season 1 anime adaptations. Just thought I should let you know that before we get too deep into this, you have been warned. In the 1990s and the 2000s, there was a staple of American television called the police procedural. These were shows like CSI, Law & Order, The Wire, NCIS, Homicide, Life on the Street, and a whole litany of other shows. These series were all fairly straightforward in the fact that they all revolved around some crime being committed and a group of dedicated cops or some equivalent thereof working together to put a case together, find the criminal responsible, and put cuffs on him. Most of the time these were episodic and just had a bad guy of the week structure, but some had long overarching plots that would take up entire seasons. In any case, the show was as much a documentary on police work as it was a drama. This type of show is still around today, although its popularity has waned over the years. But at the genre's height, we got an anime equivalent from a pretty unlikely IP. Ghost in the Shell standalone complex and its follow-up season, The Second Gig, were spin-off TV shows based on the world the movie took place in, but the two are pretty much totally disconnected. Whereas the movie had a fast-paced, action-packed plot with underlying themes on what it meant to be human, Standalone Complex is a well-grounded cyberpunk-themed police procedural with some of the same type of action sequences that the movie had mixed in with an episodic nature until it seamlessly transitioned over into an overarching plot with the Laughing Man. As you can probably tell at this point, I'm a fan of the old police procedural. And in 2018, we got something kind of close to it, Goblin Slayer. Our main character, the titular Goblin Slayer, is an adventurer for hire who only takes quests to kill goblins, and he's become quite adept at it. He's got a whole repertoire of interesting and creative ways to kill the green unwashed masses, and most episodes involve him and his party tackling one quest at a time, overcoming some obstacles in their way, and sometimes even having to back out and regroup once they find out that they're in too far over their heads, like in the Watertown arc. Now, as a goblin slaying procedural, it's pretty damn good and worth your time if that sounds like it'll tickle your fancy. But there is one other aspect of the show that took me aback, and it didn't take too long to rear its big, fat, squishy head. Big titty waifu bait. Look, having very aesthetic, big-titted anime girls running around is great and all. I mean, half of all anime would be in the red if it weren't for their gracious, heaving mounds of flesh being thrown in our faces. But why is it in my goblin-slaying procedural? Why? Is this really necessary? I get that some people would argue that it's part of the overall charm of the show, but I just find it downright distracting. And it's right here at the beginning of episode 2. Here we have an anime about an obviously traumatized man with a blood vendetta against goblins, showing us every conceivable way to kill them, with underlying themes of defying the laws of causality and overcoming the odds, and finding a greater purpose to one's life outside of your own personal obsessions. And then we have an old anime trope being thrown in that is mostly reserved for comedies and shitty light novel adaptations. The girl with the big tits who will no doubt sell tons of wall scrolls, posters, and figures. And in this anime they come in both the Onesan and Himoto variety. And with the big titty mommy Onesans we even get two to pick from. Now, I'm not saying that they're bad characters, far from it. Their characters are great. The sorceress actually has the best excuse for being a sexy, seductive character because of her mysterious nature, and her ability to conjure up spells bound by scrolls which Goblin Slayer actually uses to rather creative effect, but the other two have me a bit conflicted. The farm girl is like a little sister to Goblin Slayer, so seeing her in various states of undress with her bountiful bosoms bouncing around is unsettling, but not nearly as unsettling as the Sword Maiden, who is easily not only the most powerful character in the show, but also the sexiest as well. However, as we find out later, she fell victim to the goblins and is a rape survivor. Excuse me, but portraying a character who was raped in this kind of titillating manner just kinda seems inappropriate. And not just the kind of triggering libcuck inappropriate, but inappropriate considering the show's dark and gritty tone of just being a goblin-slaying procedural. It's not just her figure and attire either. Hell, at the end of the Watertown arc, Goblin Slayer is grievously injured during a harrowing fight against the goblin leader and succumbs to his wounds. He dies and then is resurrected by the Sword Maiden. How, you might ask? Well, she performed a spell where if he slept with her and a virgin, the priestess girl, he would be brought back to life. Okay, a spell like that I can kind of see making sense a little bit in this show, but the obvious takeaway we're supposed to get from this is, oh yeah, Goblin Slayer slayed some pussy, yeah boy! Yeah boy! It just seems really out of place. Again, I know people are going to jump in and just say it's part of the overall charm, but it's just jarring. Take a look at another dark fantasy anime, 1997's Berserk Adaptation. On the whole, everything is consistent with our main character Guts joining the Band of the Hawk to find some purpose to his life. There are no big-titted anime girls thrown in just to get us aroused or cheaply sold on the show. When waifu bait does get introduced in the manga, it's pretty deep in the story, and even then it's done in a logical and thoughtful manner. Yes, technically Casca's a tsundere, but all of her her backstory and motivations match up with the show's overall tone. Would Berserk 1997 have been better served with some tired anime tropes being thrown in, like a big titty fan service girl running around, or a lolly Himoto clinging on to Griffith? Hell no. So why is some of this shit in Goblin Slayer? Why? What does it add to the story? You can make these characters consistent with the world around them without having to turn them into tropes and jokes, like you're just trying to check off boxes on an anime checklist somewhere. Not to white knight too hard on y'all or anything, but I think the Sword Maiden got the raw end of this deal. She deserves better, and so does everybody else in this show. That being said, I did enjoy Goblin Slayer despite all of this. This is quite literally the only thing I dislike about the show. I mean, outside of some janky random CGI every once in a while. But there was one more show that came out in 2018 that not only piqued my interest by bringing up an old, nearly forgotten story setup, but also suffered from inconsistent tone as well. Golden Kamui. The race for a hidden treasure setup has been done for centuries as a plot device. Its first mainstream modern adaptation goes all the way back to the 19th century with Treasure Island. And hell, even JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 5 has an arc revolving around finding Polpo's treasure, but Golden Kamui is as true a hidden treasure show as one could hope to find in anime. Set in the early 20th century during Japan's expansion into Hokkaido, the natives known as the Ainu who lived in this region had all of their gold stolen and hidden by a marauding man who has since been incarcerated and executed. But before he died, he tattooed a detailed map depicting where he had stashed the gold across the bodies of his fellow inmates. In order to find the gold, one must find all of these men who have since made their escape and skin them to put the map together. Our main guy, a veteran of the Russo-Japanese War named Sugimoto, vows to find the treasure and use it to care for the widow of his slain friend, all while a rogue Japanese army division scours the countryside trying to take the treasure for themselves. Now that right there sounds like a badass setup for a gritty turn of the 20th century treasure hunt show set in the frozen wastes of Japan's last frontier. When it comes to violence, language, and sheer brutality, this show holds nothing back. Since Black Lagoon is one of my top anime of all time, Golden Kamui is right in my wheelhouse. However, early on the anime shows some big problems in regard to its overall tone. This time it's not a legion of big titty best girls frolicking around, it's something far more distracting. Sugimoto and our main cast members often just completely forget that they're even in a grittily brutal anime about skinning men alive, and spend several minutes at a time either indulging in slapstick comedy or discussing the latest dish they've made from woodland animals they've hunted. And this doesn't just happen once or twice, it's literally in every episode, taking up to 5 minutes at a time. One moment our main trio is discussing how the squirrel they cooked up tastes just right and that it's not too heavy or lean, while a Sirpa makes some poop jokes. And later in the same episode, Sugimoto is disemboweling a man so he can take his intestines and stuff them into his own shirt in order to fake an injury and set up an ambush. I'm sorry, but a scene like this has no business being in the same episode where we were just discussing cooking recipes and pointing out how miso paste kind of looks like poop. Not to mention, some of the character designs are just jarring. Why do these two guys look like this? Why is this guy a literal blockhead? And what the fuck is even supposed to be going on with Grandpa over here? All these things thus far wouldn't really be a problem in any other anime, except this story takes itself very seriously when it's in high gear. When focusing on the action sequences and the main story, this show wants to be dark, brooding, and gritty. When it's setting up the next arc or sequence, it's busy being whimsical and silly. All that, and I haven't even mentioned the filler episodes, one of which is one guy out of the main trio just going to the racetrack and miserably failing at betting on horse races. Ridiculous character designs would be perfectly fine in any other show, but in an anime where we made sure that Sugimoto's rifle was the correct model of Arasaka for the time period, where we made sure his outfit was the right Meiji-era army uniform for his division, where the Ainu women not only had their traditional mouth tattoos, but they also had period-correct clothing, why do motherfuckers walk around looking like this? It's not even consistent with the design of other characters in the same show. What gives? Literally everything else has painstaking attention to detail put in to make sure they sell you on a realistic atmosphere. And then they turn around and make some weird looking people who like to talk about how to cook wild game and make dick jokes. There's even an entire arc centered around one of the escaped convicts who has gone back to his serial killing ways and gets a boner every time he kills someone. Not just that, he actually reaches climax when thinking of Sugimoto killing him. This isn't even done as a creepy, freaking weird sort of thing either. It's done for laughs. Bruh, this isn't comedic comedic relief anymore. This is comedic distraction. This wasn't even the most scatterbrained anime of 2018 or even of its respective season. Spring 2018 saw some of the most eclectic anime to hit the airwaves since I don't even know when. Caligula and Uma Musume also went off the deep end of not knowing what the hell they wanted to do with themselves, but at least Uma Musume figured out that they had overextended themselves and circled the wagons enough to make a cohesive and decent sports anime about horse girls. Golden Kamui shows no signs of setting itself straight going by its second season reviews either. That being said, I actually liked everything else about Golden Kamui and Goblin Slayer. They have a great premise, they execute it well when the chips are down, it's just they don't know what to do when they're not in the midst of an action scene or trying to sell you on gritty realism. There's literally no reason why these two shows shouldn't be great other than their complete lack of consistent tone. Am I making way too big a deal out of this problem? Am I just overthinking this whole thing? Do I expect too much out of anime? Tell me what you think, fam. Peace.